thank you. I'm going to hand each of you the mic in sequence, and if you'd please provide your background and bios. Sure.
So my name is Marina. I work for BI in the corporate strategy and consulting division. I did my PhD here at the Frankfurt school and started working with federated in 2017 on blockchain and pharmaceutical topics.
Hi, my name is Axel Schumacher. I'm a trained geneticist and a blockchain enthusiast, so some of you may have read my book, Blockchain and Healthcare Strategy Guide, that was published in 2017. I went into this blockchain business because I saw so many bottlenecks in the pharma healthcare ecosystem where the technology could help. In the meantime, so I started also a company, Shivom, that's Shivom.io. This is a global precision medicine data marketplace where people can basically manage their own healthcare data, the genomic data, and offer it also for research purposes to share the data on a global level.
Hi, I'm Olaf Wilhelm.
Oh, it's working.
Okay. I'm Olaf Wilhelm. I'm just an MD here, so no glue. I was a surgeon in my former life at the University of Munich, and then I founded several companies. I'm running now the CEOs of companies, consulting in healthcare, and the other one developing in diagnostics. And I try, let's say, to understand a little bit on the other side of the world to combine both worlds.
Thank you. We're going to get adept at passing the mic back and forth, but maybe if we toss it, it'll be good. So thank you all for being here. I'm really interested first in your perspective on, let's try to define the problem space for the audience in the sense of what's broken about clinical trials and research today, and how in each of your respective ways do you envision having an impact. But if the audience weren't familiar with the problems that are being solved, let's begin there. We'll go the same path because you're closest to the mic. Sure.
So I can start. I'm not the expert in clinical trials here in the round, but from a strategic perspective, coming from pharma, clinical trials is a part of our value chain, which is very costly and very time-consuming, and it has a lot of stakeholders involved. Stakeholders that per se don't trust each other, don't know each other, and we need to implement certain controls along the process in order to establish this trust, right? So knowing about this process, and as I said, I'm not the expert, I don't go into detail here, but just knowing about these details will make it easier to understand why, at least in my opinion, clinical trial is such a very interesting part of our value chain to consider when it comes to blockchain.
Yeah, trust is a very important issue. I want to add of many problems that we can solve with blockchain and other technologies is patient empowerment, so that patients can be better, get involved in clinical trials and in research per se. And the other one is data silos. So we have a massive problem on a global level that researchers, if they're from pharma or also academic groups, they have difficulties accessing data sets. Like especially now with new GDPR rules, it's not easy to move data, to access data. You need specific consent from the patients, and then it's still a big headache. And but this problem can be solved. And actually, with our startup, Shivom, we solved it. So we developed what we call a dynamic consent form, where patients and healthy individuals are empowered to really decide what happens to their data in a very fine-grained manner. Who's interested in this can just contact me after, and I can explain in more detail. The other is, of course, breaking down this data silo. So if we have the first step and we empower patients, then the patients can exactly specify what happens with the data, and that means they can grant access to the data on a global level. And there again, we can go into more details that, for example, with using blockchain technology, we can exactly see who accesses data. Like on our platform, for example, like if you have your genomic data stored, you can say, okay, I want that algorithms can run over my data. But you can also add transparency to the whole process of clinical trials and research, because as a user, you can see exactly, oh, last week, 5 o'clock, a researcher from Boehringer Ingelheim or from Pfizer accessed my data and ran a specific algorithm on my data. And this transparency is enormously important so that trust is established between all the stakeholders.
Okay, furthermore, I think there are no problems. Basically, if you have cancer, then you have a problem. I think there are a lot of challenges. And I think let's think about for a minute, to develop a drug, the chances is 1 to 1,000 from those who entering preclinical development. And it takes about 10 to 12 years. It costs, in average, 1 billion euros. So it's a lot of money involved. The problem what we have is what you just said, a lot of parties and a lot of stakeholders involved during clinical development, they obviously do not trust each other, especially when it comes to payments. And the second, but the problem is we have a lot of intermediaries, which are from the administrative side very, very challenging. The other topic is that we have to prove that our data which we generate during clinical development are correct, immutable, and cannot be have a high integrity. Because we have to prove this to the regulatory authorities. So the FDA, for example, oversees all those data and all those clinical trials and results. And the only obligation the FDA has is very clearly to take care about the safety of our patients. They do not bring drugs to the market which may be harmful to patients. But the problem is you're running a clinical trial maybe 1,000 or 2,000 patients, and then you're collecting those data which tells you about the safety. But if you bring it on the market, suddenly 100,000 patients will get this drug. But how do you know what kind of safety issue come up? Because if somebody is 1% a safety issue, with 1,000 patients you have 10. At maximum, you don't know whether this safety issue is relevant at all. But later on, if you have 100, 200 or millions of patients treated, then maybe a safety issue comes up and you have to pull a drug from the market, but you cannot prove that the safety is not related to the drug. There's one very simple big pharma company, there were 53 patients died when the drug was on the market for years. And they had to pull it, cost a lot of money, a lot of lawsuits. They were not guilty because it was turned out at the end of the day, those 53 patients died because the physicians prescribed 5 to 8-fold higher doses than allowed by the company. But the drug was on the market, off the market, over. It costs up an enormous amount of money. So it is about trust, it is about data integrity, and I think that blockchain can evolve a lot of those challenges and address a lot of those challenges. I could go on for, let's say, 24 hours.
If we so you get all of your exercise today.
I'm just waiting.
So let's take a process view of the clinical trials life cycle and begin with site selection and recruitment. And would love to hear some of your thoughts on the implications of this technology for both risks and benefits. And I would just add that right now the vast majority of all patients with the disease are never matched to any trials or made aware that they have any research opportunities available. and that often sites are enrolled in studies that don't onboard a single patient into a study at enormous expense. So with those two pieces of backdrop, let's talk about site selection and recruitment.
Yeah, so a quick point from myself on that topic, and you probably will definitely will elaborate on that more. As you mentioned earlier, it's very difficult right now for pharmaceutical companies to identify the right sites where we want to carry out our trials. It's mostly because we don't have the transparency to see whether sites are better in a sense for the clinical trials, meaning that sites have patients with the right profile, right? That we look for in certain trials. So having an integrated databases that is secure, transparent, integer, and involves or is overarching. So right now it's very centralized and very dependent on the specific sites, but looking in a more convergent way where data converges and stakeholders can access and derive insights from a larger data set. Having that on blockchain is not a must probably, but it helps with regard to transparency and integrity, and in my sense can be beneficial when you look at this use case.
Yeah, you raise a very good point. In principle, if you want to select patients or sites, you need the right information at the right time. So you have to access, in an ideal case scenario, you want to have basically a global database. Coming back to what I was mentioning, the data silos. If you run a clinical trial, traditionally we have the problem that a lot of the study populations, they are from certain areas on the planet, like most clinical trials, I don't have exact data, but probably 95 to 98% are based on white Caucasians. And pharma companies have, of course, the huge problem that those populations that are, okay, that's important for Europe, for the US, but if you want to market your drug in another area on the planet, then you run into big problems because the drug was not tested properly. So we need a global access database of sites, of patients, of phenotypes that where you can, as a researcher in a pharma company, or same from academic environments, where you can just simply search for specific metadata. And this metadata must, of course, be validated and has to be of high quality. And these are all things that can be implemented using blockchain technology. As she mentioned, so blockchain technology is one part of it, and it's not the magic solution to all of these bottlenecks. But it can be used to address all of these problems. And this is, again, one part of the platform that we build. But it needs, of course, a lot of stakeholders that feed into such a system. So that's the reason we need like events like these where we come really together and work on also interoperability between different systems, because there are a lot of companies, there are government institutions that develop such solutions like ConsenSys. There are a lot of potential partners that could and should work together, and I think that's why the idea, and we should talk about this, how important it is.
Maybe let's go just for a minute back and say how we do it today. So if you want to, as a pharma company, run a clinical trial, for example, let's say take lung cancer in a certain stage, you send out the CRO to hundreds of centers, he's interviewing physicians and nurses, how many patients, etc., etc. That takes about 3 to 6 months, then get the data back. You don't know whether those information are all absolutely correct. And then you say this center has so many lung cancer patients this week. What you don't know, and you try to find out how many studies are run way of the same centers. So it wouldn't make any sense when you have a center with 1,000 lung cancer patients, but he is running 20 trials in parallel, and another center has 50 patients, has no trial, and is a much more efficient center. So how to solve this issue? Because any center you open and doesn't enroll any patient costs again money. Today, if you look at comprehensive cancer centers, which usually participate in clinical trials, they have all by law the obligation to store the data from their patients electronically. The challenge is that, for example, in Germany, we have 15 different electronic systems, which may be compatible. And also, the university and the physicians, because of data protection law, doesn't want to give out data, to access data. So what it would be simple is to have all the centers get access to those data, have it on a snapshot, know how many patients are there, how many competitive trials are there. Those information is there. The problem is you cannot download those data from all these kind of centers. And I think here we have, if we have it on blockchain and apply federated learning, where you leave the data where they are, and you can access those data, and maybe, for example, maybe it doesn't work for all 15 different electronic systems, but 2 major ones have 60% market share, so it would be a lot of already. So if you would apply that, and you can learn them, you can do your feasibility study, which center you should open on access of site initiation, and then which will fill all the inclusion-exclusion criteria, would speed up time dramatically, but would make the trial much more efficient, because any day a trial runs longer costs again a lot.
Thank you very much. So thinking about a next dimension of research in this context, another implication of this technology is facilitating novel protocol designs and study designs. Moving away from traditional, a research subject has to come into an exam room, for example, getting toward digital clinical trials, and then and also thinking about the way that we do analytics and deliver findings. The pace and the speed of that can be radically changed. We can move effectively to near real-time, continuously available trial data analytics and trials that are designed in a way that can be executed much more quickly and efficiently. And the last piece is the being able to use blockchain to validate Internet of Medical Things that can create patient self-reported data that is absolutely as clinically valid, if not even potentially more so than the unconnected device that's in a physical exam room. So thinking about real-time analytics, digital trial design, and connected devices. Go.
Yeah, very interesting topics. So you mentioned remote clinical trials. I would say we're not fully there yet, but I heard Novartis and Lupi, so there are some colleagues here. All pharmaceutical companies are pretty much on the road towards driving clinical trials from in a traditional setting towards a more remote setting. And in my eyes, this trend is a huge driver in also including this technology within clinical trials. So I would say we're not there yet, so there is not, blockchain has no prime time yet within clinical trials, but when we are talking about fully remote clinical trials, we're talking about different identity problems, I mentioned it, and in my eyes, this will be a huge driver to also advance blockchain in this setting.
That's right. In this context, we have to emphasize that we have to go back to standards and to working together. So I really have to emphasize this here. Like if you have different pharma companies working on this, or they want to have a solution, they better sit together and find out what they really want. Because if I talk to 10 different people from 10 different companies, I get 10 different answers, and then it's difficult to build solutions for so many different problems or bottlenecks that are encountered. What is clear is we will move pretty fast to technical solutions that can collect all of this data from medical devices, from wearables, self-reported data, and bringing this into a context with a person's genetic data and other lab results. And of course, like we implement in the moment AI algorithms that can crunch this data on the platform, but it's a complex process, and that's the reason like we have to bring all these stakeholders also together, from the AI researchers, from medical device companies, pharma, to build the solutions to make it really proper solution. But we are already there. When we can collect the data, we can regulate the access to the data, we can analyze the data. We just have to put it together. This is all. This just costs a little bit of money. But I think we are on the technology side, we are already there.
Remote development, I think, is a very, very nice approach, but it will take some time, because in order to mirror a clinical trial with any kind of electronic system, you can chop up a clinical trial in a lot of modules which have to be compiled again. The other thing to consider is that with a clinical trial, if you run the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, several phase 3 trials, then it doesn't stop. Also, if the drug is on the market, and afterwards you collect data. And again, this has to be mirrored again in your electronic system. However, just think about it. There's a company out there, not name the name, immune therapeutic agent on the market. They have run, I think, 200 or 300 phase 3 trials. Now, just think about it for a moment. If you all, the drug is not for years now on the market, if you could get access to this kind of information, now including also then mutation analysis and all this kind of information, you actually could, and you know that the data set you have all in bits and pieces are immutable, written in stone, you cannot change them anymore. And I think also the regulatory authority would be open to the thing that you design, well, we run now electronically with federated learning or with another study, just using this retrospective data, which we cannot change anyway. Define very clearly how, in a prospective way, how our study should be run on those data sets without including any patient, just the information and the data from the patient. You can come up with new label expansions for a drug, or a reduced one because you just suddenly consider safety issues, which you say, well, this kind of patient should not get the drug. You pull it back. So there is a tremendous value. I think it takes years and years to develop that. But more importantly, if we do it right, we can also convince the regulatory authorities in Europe and especially in the United States to do remote clinical trials in a way that it will be less costly over time, but much more efficient, because at the end of the day, and that is all what our responsibility is, protects patients in many ways.
I was gonna come to you in a second. So one last question for the panel, and then I'd love to open it up to the audience. So thinking about blockchain infrastructures as federated infrastructures, mutualized technology, in your respective roles, would you talk a little bit about what you think could be removed from the basis of competition, made pre-competitive, and moved into shared infrastructures, and how that could influence, and it's following on a point that you made, but I think it's across the board relevant. So love to hear your thoughts on that, and then if you can kind of be concise on the answers so we have time for audience questions.
This is a very, very, very important point. We need to display competitive consortia. We encourage people, for example, to do this for the data collection, which is obviously expensive. For example, collecting genetic data for clinical trials. That makes absolute sense that pharma companies join efforts and do this together. There's no reason to do this again and again. You have to sequence a person only once. The same is, of course, for the infrastructure you need to handle the data. You don't need 10 different systems, you need only one system. And on the blockchain, you can basically specify what can happen with the data. You have the smart contracts, you can make rules how data is handled. So there is no problem in IP-related issues because you can, before you share data or before you can collect data, you can make rules between the different parties and the patients. So that makes it so much easier and especially cheaper to run clinical trials and research with the data. It can really save billions and billions.
So if I understood the question correctly, it's about competition between companies. I think we left that behind already. Because at the end of the day, a lot of companies join forces. Because they know it's the big guys join forces in marketing efforts because they know they will be more efficient. And at the end of the day, if you share information, you get also again back. Because it is so expensive over time that I think anything to share, and as long as it's embedded in the system, who owns what, if we introduce something, then I think that what would be sport without competition?
I want to add one thing. This is especially a huge opportunity now for the pharma companies, because I did a little bit of research on for digital health, how money actually moves globally in this space. And I'm not the only one, but there are several people that predict that in, let's say, 4 or 5 years from now, the biggest pharmaceutical company in the world will not be Novartis, Roche, or Pfizer, but it will be Amazon or Facebook or Tencent.
Not a chance. GDPR.
They are companies, they're all just companies. But then we come back to the trust issue. Who wants to trust all of the data to, let's say, a Facebook clinic or an Amazon clinic? So, but this is a different issue.
I completely agree because I don't know whether the names you mentioned are correct, but at the end of the day, the real leading pharma company, and maybe it's not a company, maybe it's just the patients altogether. Who owns the data will be the owner. And that I think is key, whether it's Amazon, Facebook, but maybe we should think that all patients will be the owner. And that's the future pharma company.
I think this is what we really have to when you empower people. Like in our platform, we do not own the data. We don't even want to own the data. We don't touch it. We just provide the platform, and the patient or the healthy individual, they own the data, and only they decide what really happens with it.
It's interesting, isn't it, how so much of our past was focused on IP protection, intellectual property protection, but now it's pretty broadly acknowledged that the value, the cumulative force multiplying long-term value of highly reusable data will likely outstrip other value mechanisms. Okay, so how much time do we have for questions? Want to respect the agenda?
10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, well, right on. This is going to be great. Okay, so right there.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking up a lot, but I love what you guys are talking about, and this is exactly why we proceeded to go forward with such a stigmatized, drug as our first example, because we were dealing with a stigmatized technology and a stigmatized drug in an environment where there are in fact clinical trials going on, especially now all across Europe, and unfortunately, actually recently departed CEO of a major Canadian cannabis company was fond of saying, we are going to be the Google of cannabis, for example. So a lot of, it's not just the cannabis industry, but a lot of pharmaceutical industry folks, a lot of insurance and payroll folks are also going to have to re-examine how they use data, collect data, and process data. And that, I don't think, is a cultural business shift that has happened yet. And I was hoping that maybe we could get some feedback from you guys. Like, for example, many companies have to use the same system. It's not just what you develop in-house.
Yeah, it's good that you have mentioned that. By the way, we are also having a medical cannabis pilot project.
Where?
In Canada.
We should talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Small world, we're everywhere, right?
Exactly. No, but in the end, what is important is we are doing this not for the data or for the pharma companies or for the government regulations. We are doing this to help people, right? The patients to get healthy or healthy people not to get sick in the first place. This is why we have to collect the data and crunch this data, analyze it, and make it available on a global scale so that we can really make it actionable. And to make it actionable, we need platforms. And there we can come together and build all of this fantastic stuff.
And on our next questions, if you could please just encapsulate a quick question, and if you have a person to direct it to, that's great too. So we want to get to as many folks as possible. In the back, please.
My name is Flannery from the Netherlands, from the
Just a second.
University of Life Sciences. That was not so important, so they focused on I have a devil's advocate question to all of you actually, is that they say that the blockchain is a disruptive technology, but we are discussing it in the old fashion, European Union, national level, going down. So what you said about patient empowerment, it really triggered me. Because just imagine that 10 people all across the world will discover that they have a very special disease, which is very peculiar. They could say to a pharmaceutical company, here is my medical data, design for me a drug. So it's about governance. We are doing this all top down. Heather probably is not very happy about it because she's making standards. What's your opinion about this top-down, bottom-up thing?
I think that this technology is going to challenge the way that we think about structuring within jurisdictions.
But we are still structuring down.
We are structuring downward. Would other panelists like to react to that quickly?
Sure, I think patient empowerment is a very important topic. Speaking from our own experience, so it's public, we are now testing within clinical trials in collaboration with IBM in Canada with regard to the informed consent. So does compliance increase, does patient empowerment increase, and does monitoring costs and time reduce? So patient empowerment is a very critical endpoint for us in our test setting, and a very specific use case, I agree, but very, very important, and very good that you raised that question.
Yeah, I think there's no way around to empower the patients and all the healthy people, actually. In the ideal case, we want to have a system where no one gets sick in the first place. And for that, I can only say people should learn, but it's a learning curve, not only for the industry, but for educational systems to educate citizens about their rights, the value of their data, that it can be made actionable. This is a difficult part. Like I mentioned before, I developed myself a very fine-grained digital consent for patients. But then you run into the problem, like if I go to a patient here in Frankfurt, patient may understand it properly, but if I go to a rural area in India, where the person maybe not even cannot even read, then we have a problem. So, and if you're talking about GDPR or HIPAA, no one understands that. I mean, you can even ask a lawyer, and they will say, well, I have no idea what it really means. So you cannot expect from a patient to understand this. So we have to give them the tools to make it as easy as possible, that really everyone, even without a medical or law degree, can understand the digital concept and make their data actionable. This is, I think, where we have to also work together and make it as easy as possible.
And just a quick comment that on the topic of patient empowerment and self-sovereignty with respect to their data governance, we have an entire additional panel on that topic to go deep on that subject.
Yeah, so my name is Pratik Malwar. I'm one of the entrepreneurs coming from Charité and BIH, Berlin Institute of Health, which is based in Berlin. My question is to you, Axel. I think your company introduced a very interesting concept of gamification, of sharing the data. What are the learnings? I think you have a fantastic experience, and the whole society, all the entrepreneurs out there think on more or less the same concept, right? So to empower the patient, to what we learned from there. I'm really curious to know more on the level whether people are really ready to share their data for some in terms of getting some benefit or some points, or they are still scared of pushing that button of share.
Very good question.
That's a very interesting question. So, what are actually the incentives for people to share their healthcare data? First, I think we have to provide people the means to share their data in a secure way. And if you know it's secure, you are much more likely to share your data. If you know it's not abused in any way. And for this, blockchain is a fantastic tool to really keep track of the data and keep track who accesses the data, or if there's a data breach or whatever. You can all see this on chain. And in our experiences, most people, of course, that come to us, they want to share their data. This is a very biased view that we have. But then we go back. Like when I was working at that time the largest biobank in the world in Munich, and we asked our blood donors to share data and support research, and I think, if I remember correctly, 97% of our blood donors would agree to support research and share their data. So most people are actually willing to share data if they understand that it's for a good purpose, not only for their own health, but also for the public good.
But these were people who were sharing their blood, so it's
Right.
biased.
It's also a little bit
They're
biased.
They're willing to give.
Share the flag.
Yeah.
Maybe one last question?
In the front, please.
Oh, you must.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, please do, Dr. Bell.
So there's this question, I'm coming from the bad side. Patients having a serious disease have a complete different mindset. I think they really want to help also others. That's the reason why you have all this kind of foundations, this patients advocacy group. People also, we have a small foundation in Munich where 8,000 patients have contributed not only their data, but also actually their cancer tissue and their blood. So they're happy, really engaged in doing that. But I think the key is really how do we educate, and this is all run under, let's say, IRB control. Because I think Heather mentioned two which are really highly relevant. Well, first of all, digital identity, and second is how can we make sure what patients is empowering what kind of data he wants to share. So maybe just think about it 1 second. In the United States, in some hospitals, any patients who crosses the door get complete genomic sequence. And maybe because he has just an appendicitis, right? A 23-year-old lady or girl, and then he leaves. So maybe we discover an Alzheimer's gene. This patient doesn't want that this Alzheimer's gene is knowledgeable to the insurance company or to the bank, because he never will get any life protection insurance anywhere. He's more or less social in society dead. So I think that is the challenge, and I think to apply this technology today, blockchain, federated learning, we should do this in controlled studies, run an investigation research board, to follow strict guidelines, to make no mistakes for other technologies from the past. And if we can then prove it works, and we have the patient integrity, privacy, and security, then it will be applied to everywhere. But I think we have to do it in a controlled manner.
Oh, battery's dead. I'm gonna project.
Sorry.
One last question,
Thank you.
please.
So my name is Jan. I'm a biophysics student from Goethe University, and I think this question goes to Dr. Wilhelm and Schumacher mainly, but I think you all can answer. So I've heard you talk about genetic sequencing and genome sequencing, so I guess the trend is going towards personalized therapy. But usually, big pharma makes their money by producing blockbuster drugs, right? So, how do we manage like going from a maximum revenue perspective to a maximum novelty perspective?
That's over. I think, sorry. That's
a great
exactly
question.
the issue 10 years ago. You say we reduce our market size in general. The medicine, what costs today, you cannot justify these kind of costs if it only works on 20% of patients. That's the issue. Everybody recognized it. I work also for Lilly. It is very, very clear. You can only justify a cost like 100 or 200,000. We are talking about annual cost for treatment only if you have 70, 80, or 90%. And therefore, I think this patient-tailored treatment, whether it's based on NGS or any other companion diagnostic, I think that's recognized by everybody that this is the future. And then you can only ask for this money if you really have a really excellent response. Because if you go and hope you have a headache, you don't want to take 10 different headache medicines. Right? You take one and it should work, at least to a chance of 90%. And that's for any kind of treatment as well. So I think this paradigm shift we have already done.
Yeah, maybe to add here, so this is a trend that is also very driven by the payer side. So when we talk about value-based pricing, there is no option also for pharmaceutical companies to not go into that direction.
Absolutely.
But
One
we
last
have,
remark, and then we'll have to wrap up.
the only problem we have is that people are still not really empowered. It's my phone.
Yes.
Your phone ruined your remark. It's
Um,
all, I'm joking. Please.
That's not my daughter. No, the things that people are not really empowered to use their own genetic data for information collecting. It's not only the pharma companies that have to use this data, but this data should be made available to every one of us to basically guide your own journey to be healthy, right? And there we are still, unfortunately, at the very beginning. Like here in Germany, you cannot even get a normal genetic test done on your own. This is not legal, which is ridiculous in my opinion. But this is a different
Didn't know
discussion.
that. That's very interesting. Well, audience, please join me in thanking our panelists.